It's hardly news that the U.S. has long had a trade gap with China, but this week we learned something that is new, which is that at least in the year 2011, the U.S. actually enjoyed a trade advantage in the export of goods and services in clean energy. And here to talk about that today is me, Zhou Boris, and my colleague, Chen Weihua. So, Weihua, this week we heard from the Pew Charitable Trust in a fairly comprehensive survey that they conducted with Bloomberg New Energy Finance that in 2011 the U.S. had a $1.6 billion trade surplus in the area of clean energy, which the report defines as solar, wind, and energy smart technologies, which they defined as, energy efficient items such as light bulbs, batteries, and the like. What are your impressions from that report?
Well, I think it's very interesting because if you recall Obama's State of Union address just a month ago, and he literally named China and also Germany for leading the clean energy sector, it gives people the sort of, I say, false impression maybe that China actually is leading and have an edge over the United States. But I think that's not a surprise. Now you learn the U.S. actually had a surplus in clean air technology because the U.S. has always been traditionally strong in technology and innovation. So as in every other area, China is now strong in manufacturing, and U.S. is great in innovation and technology. So this is what we call the complementary part of our economy, and so that means we have more room for cooperation. So that doesn't surprise me, but at the same time, you should realize that China is catching up quickly. If you look at the pictures over the past 10 years, China almost gone from zero to being a major player in the clean energy sectors.
You mentioned that China is in the process of catching up, and by that I guess you mean that up the value chain, as in other industries. And of course, the report, as you know, pointed out that the relative strengths between the U.S. and China. That in the U.S.'s case, it's manufacturing of the equipment that's actually used in making things like solar panels, the chemicals, and the various systems control systems that are used in manufacturing. While China is, for all intents and purposes, kind of the factory floor for this industry, as other sectors. So is it only a matter of time before China is actually doing more of the high value, high margin manufacturing in this sector and pushing the U.S. out? Or are they going to continue to be complementary?
It's a matter of time. If you just look at the Samsung, South Korea, how they have caught up with Apple, and how Chinese have caught up in this TV sets, so other electronics industries. I think this process may be slow. U.S. may be still a leader, but China will be a stronger and stronger competitor. As you also mentioned, China has already put high priority of clean energy in this 12th five-year plan. It means the government is going to make huge investment in these areas, and also in R&D, and which means China will gradually have the capacity to do their own innovation, research and development. And of course, this China and the U.S. Clean Energy Center is a demonstration of our joint commitment to develop this together. After all, this is important for both countries. But after decades, I am optimistic China will be a major player. But that doesn't mean that's to get the U.S. out of the market. I don't think that's the purpose of China's plan.
In talking with the people who compiled the report for the Pew Charitable Trust, we also learned that at least in 2012, although the complete data weren't yet available, the trend is holding. That is, the U.S. will continue to have an edge for the time being in the three areas of clean energy that they talked about. Also, a really big factor is, as they pointed out in discussions after the report was issued, is that there are trade cases. in this area, particularly over solar panels, wind turbines, wind towers for utilities. What do you make of that? And are we likely to see an escalation of those trade cases? Because after all, China has at least made some moves toward retaliation in this area. The U.S. accuses China, by the way, of dumping those products on the U.S. market.
I think that sort of tariff things is a big distraction. If you, even the Pew Charities experts mentioned that there was a lot of decrease of Chinese exports because of this is really policy driven, and there was a lot of increase of exports from Southeast Asia, South Korea, and Europe, which is competition driven because of these U.S. Tariffs on Chinese solar panels, and there is a decrease of Chinese solar exports, that's for sure. And I think China, U.S., India, and Europe are engaging sort of tariff games, and I don't think that's a good sign. I hope it doesn't get out of control. After all, we still, have a common goal of making the earth clean, which is we need more clean energy for everyone, not just the U.S. or China, and for the whole planet.
Well, in pointing out the cooperative nature of trying to clean up the planet, there is the question of course, climate change policy in each country. A lot of people have expected the U.S. to take the mantle of leadership. The U.S., in recent years has kind of resisted this. China, meanwhile, is sort of sitting back and saying, look, we've got our own economic priorities here. How do the U.S. and China cooperate going forward on climate change?
I think after all, China and the U.S. as the largest emitters of greenhouse gases, they have the responsibility to take the lead. I think China has taken a great initiative. We mentioned the 12th five-year plan. China has been very ambitious and invested a lot, but there is still a long way to go. That's for sure. I think that's why U.S. technology could help China to have a shortcut to achieving the goals. But on the other hand, I think we do see Obama administration is struggling to getting support from the Republicans in the Congress for his renewable energy plan, and so he is still fighting. I think the U.S. has not shown enough leadership in those global climate change summits in Copenhagen, Cancun, Durban, or Doha. I think this is actually troubling to me. I think the world expects the U.S. to take the leadership, and it's the by far the largest emitter per capita, and China still lagged far behind in terms per capita sense. China with 1/5 of humanity, and the U.S. Who always wants to be the leader of the world should just take the lead in this regard. I think the public should put more pressure on the leaders, and I hope both countries will realize that.
Well, on that hopeful note, we'll end this edition of China Daily's Across America Talk. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.